So, welcome back to the show. I have a very good close friend of mine here, Thomas, today. We've known each other for probably like over 25 years now, maybe even a little bit longer. I don't even know how much, stop counting like after a certain point. But we're old
Yeah.
childhood friends. And today we're going to be talking about Thomas's travels. He's one of my friends that traveled like consistently for like 10 plus years with rarely returning back home. And I know a lot of times, um, people avoid traveling because of the cost. So I'm hoping to kind of chat with him today and him give you his perspective on how he was able to do it financially for that long and kind of sustain himself. So, Thomas, if you'd like to begin, just kind of give yourself a quick introduction and we can get started.
Yeah, my name's Thomas. I currently live in Indianapolis. I run a moving company with my brother, and I've been back in the States for about 5 years. I'm 34. So spent the best part of my 20s traveling around.
Cool. So
Yeah.
when did you decide to like start traveling?
After college, I graduated when I was like 21. So took off for those years. Decided to leave the country. I think it was partly because I had a degree that was, underemployed. A
Yeah, and for people that
philosophy,
don't know, it was probably
philosophy and
around like
religious studies. Yep.
2007 or 2008 when like a lot of
Yeah.
people were having trouble finding a job. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Right. Exactly. So it wasn't a great economy. I didn't want to join the military, so decided to take off. Man.
Well, what was kind of like what was your like financial situation like before you took off? What kind of planning did you do?
Mm, my financial situation, I was probably about 20 grand in debt, just student loans. Maybe had 5 grand in a checking account, about 5 grand, I would say. So it wasn't horrendous. It's not like I was drowning in it. It wasn't too bad of payments monthly, but yeah, and I just made those payments every month. That was my goal. I was like, I'm just going to keep making the payments, pay it off in 10 years. So other than that, no, nothing really burdensome. Just a little bit of student debt, and that's it, man.
Well, what kind of research went into like in terms of like selecting which region you're going to travel to? Did you already have in mind that you wanted to travel for this long period of time? Or was it kind
No,
of like I'm going to go try it for 1 week and then all of a sudden like 10
no,
years later
a
you're like, "No,
year.
I'm still here."
I was like,
1 year.
I want to get out for a year. Why not? It's a good chance. There's no responsibilities tying me down, and feel young, feel full of energy. So let's roll. Yeah, I was with a girl. She was the real drive. She was more like, let's go to Europe or let's go to wherever. And so I just kind of let her pick the place. I didn't really care. And so we ended up in Greece. And it was cool. It's a good start.
So what kind of planning did you do? Like you selected Greece, but was there any kind of planning in terms of like are there ideal places to move to and stay in, or was there any kind of research done before you guys went?
Not really. Just thought what would be an interesting place if you only get 1 year. Let's just think of it that way. Let's say you're going to set aside one whole year of your life and like pick the place that's most interesting to you. This is developed later in my mind, but always go directly to where you want to go when it comes to travel. Never mess around. Don't think, well, if I go here, then I can go here to here to here to here. Just screw that. Go directly to where you want to go. Everything will develop from there at a much better pace than it would if you have like a prelude to what you really want to do. Just don't mess around with it. Go directly where you want to go. It's more relevant for like the backpacker mindset versus if you're planning a vacation, then that's basically what you're doing anyway. But yeah, that no compromise, just go where you want to go. The world's so big, man. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go or do anything you don't want to do in that type of lifestyle. So
Gotcha.
yeah, more on that later if you're interested. But we didn't plan much. We just thought, well, where would we want to spend a year? It's like, well, Greece sounds pretty cool. It'll be kind of warm. At that time, I was living in Indiana already, so it reminded me from the photos, what do you have to go off of really? It looks like California, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I remember California. It was pretty right on. So let's check out Greece. That was it, pretty much.
Well, how did you kind of like make it happen in terms of like financially, and what place did you guys decide to actually stay in Greece?
You just have to be a little bit mad, like in the sense of a little bit nutty. You just got to be like, well, whatever, this is gonna happen. You got to have a little of that. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying that you do have to have that. That's what got me to be able to do it. Maybe there's people who are more comfortable planning everything out, but what I've noticed is there's a neurotic type that hits the road too, and it doesn't leave them behind. It follows them. If they've got a flow chart or they've got an Excel sheet broken down of all their expenses and their planned expenses, what the hell are you leaving for? You're not escaping anything. You're still in your accountant mindset. So if you want to be free, it's more than just being in a different place. I think it's a little bit of faith, a little bit of self-awareness, like I can do this. I'll be fine. I have capabilities. I have confidence in myself, whatever that might mean to you. So if you have those things, then what the hell do you need to plan too much for? Just go for it. Worst thing happens is so the best plan is have a little bit set aside so you can get back to where you're going to be safe. Like I had a credit card that had a $2,000 limit, and I just didn't put any money on that. And I thought, well, worst case scenario, I'll just fly home. And maybe not everybody has this opportunity, but I'll just fly home and live in my dad's basement, heaven forbid. But that's kind of the alligator at the bottom
He's
of
not
the
that bad
pit.
of a guy.
I mean, he's a cool guy, whatever, right? But nobody wants to do that, right? That's
Yeah,
not like
yeah,
the
I
goal.
understand.
You don't want to do that, but that's that sort of impetus, like don't fall in the pit because you're gonna be living in your dad's basement like a fucking loser. You don't want to do that, and it happens. And I'm sorry if I swore on a podcast. I'm not supposed to swear. I'm not
No,
sure if
it's
this is
okay.
a
This is no
Christian
ratings
gym or something.
podcast. Anything goes. It can go from
Holy
PG
liquor.
to like
Well,
crazy rating.
well, anyway, okay. So yeah, that was my plan. My plan was to have an escape plan. So that's cool. So if it got hot, if I fall off the bike, so to speak, I'll be all right. I'll be able to get home, be able to be safe. Didn't need to do it, so it's good. But I think that that's enough for some folks. It's like investing in that you're going to have your own assessment of what type of risk you want to take. Are you a high risk taker? Are you okay with taking a loss? Are you okay with the loss in maybe time, or are you financially driven? You want to make sure that every moment counts and it's all building towards some sort of future where you can write it on a resume. I don't know who you are, depending on who the listener is. They're going to have a different reason for this. But I wanted to get my mind free and see a different perspective, and that's all you need. That's all you need is just make sure you can take care of yourself and be safe, and then everything else will fall into place. You don't know the map. You don't know the layout until you get there, and then you start to build the map of what's reality, what you could do, and it's always like that. I experimented at different points in the travel. You mentioned it was near a decade of trying to plan ahead and have an idea what's the right, and it doesn't work, man. You hit the ground there, and it's always different than what you think. Certain amount of research or forethought makes sense if you're trying to understand what you're getting into, but really the reality and your forethought are very rarely meet, especially if it's a new adventure. I mean, let me put it this way: if you know what you're getting yourself into, it's not much of an adventure. So what the hell are you going for in the first place? If you already know what it's going to
Just
be
to
like
take
and what the
pictures.
expense. Yeah. Well, okay, that's one way to do it for sure. And hey, man, go for it if that's the thing. Like build a nice profile, and that's all good. But it's different for different reasons.
Well, go ahead and describe kind of like your experience in Greece. Like, how's your living situation? What did you guys use for
Yeah,
transportation? All that stuff. Like for
yeah.
food as well. Like how
It was awesome. The only place where we felt pinched, and we didn't have a lot of money, like I said, and we were planning to try to live out our time there and find work, is Athens, and that was only because we were fresh in the capital. We got drawn in towards this is the first time overseas ever, and we're in the capital city of this country, and we got drawn into the tourist areas, which is fine. A lot of times that's a lot of fun, but that's where you're going to get the higher prices. You're going to pay American prices. As soon as you get outside of that, like we ended up on Crete, and it was so cheap, dude. I eat what I want all day, every day. I lived in a little seaside cottage right by the ocean, take a 5 minute walk and see the waves breaking for dirt cheap. It's a couple $100 a month. I can't remember, but I even remember then thinking, this is so cheap. How come everybody doesn't do this? Is what I thought. There was also the financial crisis. Greece was, blown apart by the financial crisis, and there wasn't a lot of work. So the American savings, even though they weren't much here, went a long way there. That's one way to think of it. Like you take your currency and you play the exchange market. You find a place where it's going a long way for a good quality of life. That might come from hearsay, or it might come from just looking at the cost of rent or something. I mean, that's what you want to plan for, then you can do that. If your goal is to live cheap and like experience life without having to work, you could certainly find places to do that. But if you just want to go to where you want to go, then just show up. You'll find a place. Your standard of life might not be the same. It might be higher, it might be lower. But ours was higher than it was, so that's good.
Did you like invest in any kind of like medical insurance program, or what do you think about that for travelers?
Eat a little dirt, drink a little water.
Yeah,
You'll be all right.
and you'll be fine. You'll get used to it, man. Just walk it off.
I mean, hey, I'm not giving any advice to any particular person, but that's how I roll. I just say, if you're not willing to take the risk, again, you're not really leaving anything behind. What are you doing if you're not willing to take a risk? And maybe the medical insurance is a great idea, but I was a young, dumb kid, and what the hell? It worked out. In a way, and I've consciously thought this throughout the time, I made better decisions because I knew I wasn't covered. Maybe that's just me. But when dudes were like, oh, dude, we're going to take these dirt bikes on this road, I'm like, I'm not. Sounds like a hell of a lot of fun, but if I break my leg, I'm in debt for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I didn't do those things, and maybe I would have broke my leg or worse, And so playing it cautious was the way of rolling because I knew that I would be screwed. I didn't do stuff like that. Of course, something could befall you that you don't know can happen, but if you're conscious of the fact that this is on you, then you don't have that safety net of somebody's, the insurance is going to take care of me or something, then maybe you make different decisions. That's a little bit to think about, but insurance is probably a good idea. I don't know what the cost of it is. Like I said, I just kind of thought, the hell with that. More likely than not, an ignorant, uninformed decision, but that's what I did. So.
Gotcha. And what was the like transportation situation like? Was it like pretty expensive to get around in Greece, or
Where are you
did they
going?
have like
You're
Uber
already in
back then?
paradise.
I forgot exactly
No.
when Uber came. Yeah, they didn't have Uber back. I figured.
No Uber.
Just like this standard taxi.
There was walking. There was walking slowly. There was
3 speeds of walking.
That's all I really did.
They didn't have like a random camel you can rent. They have those
No
everywhere
camels.
now where you travel.
No camels. No, we took boats sometimes just for fun, and then bus. Yeah, bus was relatively easy and cheap, super cheap. That was about it. We didn't ride taxis. Didn't really need to. The great thing about living in Europe, for those interested in living in Europe, and especially Mediterranean Europe, is if you live near the center of the city, that's pretty much everything you want anyway. A lot of times it's built in the more beautiful place of the city, so you've got everything. Restaurants, there's work closer to the city center. It's a little different than in an American city where it's insanely expensive to live in the center of an American city, and you might not want to spend all your time there. But most of the time in Europe, I was pretty happy being in the cities, in the core of the city. So I found it reasonable to live there.
How long were you in Greece for?
Less than a year, like 8 months. We ended up being in Greece.
How does like the whole immigration thing work in terms of like how long like you can stay there, and does it kind of renew every time you go to a new country? I never really kind of traveled as long as you traveled for, so.
Yeah, it's always a little different, and it's changed since we were there, so I don't know where it's at now, but I know that most places are 90-day. Most places in like developed Europe, including Greece, are like 90-day, no questions asked tourism visas. If you're an American passport holder, everything changes when you don't have the American passport, and you have to just look through. All the countries have a list online that tells you what you can do. That's the best way to put it. If you just want to see, okay, I want to go to Greece, so you look it up. It's like American passport holder or Australian or Canadian or whatever. And what are your options? Can you do a working holiday? Can you apply for a temporary workers permit? Can you be on a cultural visa? There's all sorts of loopholes and ways through. And there's different requirements for each. Like you can have for example, in Japan, you can have a cultural visa and not work at all, and you stay for several years as long as you show that you have enough funds to take care of yourself at like a minimal threshold of lifestyle. And so that's easy, and that you're studying something cultural. So if you want to study ninjutsu, if you want to, you can make it up or whatever.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Dude, I met this giant fat Australian guy who was studying ninjutsu in the mountains in Japan. I'm like, no, you're not. He's like, yeah. Well.
He's like, I'm quiet as a cat, man. You're not even
Yeah.
gonna hear me coming.
He just played with
You'll be like
airsoft
dead
guns in the
twice.
mountains. Like he was wild, but just an example. You can get a visa um, if you just look at the list of what's appropriate to apply to. But as far as Europe went, we went on tourist visa, and then we got an education visa and took classes to become English teachers because that seemed like the revenue for no skill college graduates. So
So you weren't were you working at all in Greece, or you weren't working at all?
we worked for free
Oh, okay.
because
Okay.
well, we had hoped that it was going to turn into a job, but things you learn as things go along. So we worked at an English school, an unpaid position for like experience, I guess is one way to put it, and realized we were never going to get paid. And so then we took jobs in the Czech Republic. And so,
Gotcha. So what was your rough, like, if you had to average it out, your monthly expenses staying in Greece for that 8 to 9 months?
dude, I don't remember, but we had enough with the couple grand that we had to be fine and still have money to make the move. So, like, I mean, it wasn't that bad. I remember a few times near the end when I had a bottle of wine and I was like starting to worry about it a little bit. I was like, it's getting kind of close to the wire. I don't know, maybe
You're
we
like,
got a
this could
grand
be
or
the last bottle.
maybe we got a
Why?
grand or two left or something like that. And it's like, well, who knows. But and then I think that's what actually, because we didn't want to leave Greece. It was awesome, but that's what drove us to find a place where we could get jobs.
What do you think? What's your thought on, like, the way you did it versus the way people travel for long periods of time as well, but also get into
Mm,
like a lot of debt? Because I see a lot of those long-term travelers also, they
mm,
kind of
yeah,
maybe travel for 5 to 10 years, but then they come back with like 30, $40,000 or more in debt, like after that.
crazy. I'm afraid of debt. I don't like the
Yeah.
idea of it. And I mean, the student debt, I was already in it. I wasn't planning on working to pay that off right away. So I just paid like I said, I just paid the monthlies. But other than that, again, it's a personality thing. I wouldn't want to pay for what I eat now later, really. Uh, to put it like for 4 years, if you're going to travel and come back and be in debt, you're just digging your grave, man. That would suck. So what are you trying to do? If you're trying to stay out there as long as possible, just try to break even, maybe save a little scratch. There's all sorts of ways to make money. Uh, I mean, I started making money in the Czech Republic and we did good. We got private students and we had jobs and it was fine. We were saving money. And what was your question? I got sidetracked in my own head.
I'm pretty sure you ran into these type of travelers on your travel, the ones that,
Oh, they
like,
go to debt.
versus like working, they just get into like a
Yeah.
lot of debt, and that strategy versus kind of the comparison of your strategy. I mean, I like your approach a lot more. I kind of took that approach myself, uh,
Right.
versus
There's
just obviously putting it all on credit that you can't pay off, etc. So,
there's two ways I thought about it. First is I don't want to have a limit that's bringing me back. And so that's if you take out a loan or if you're like I got 10 grand on my credit card, I'm just going to travel till it's done. There's that looming tombstone of the 10 grand's up, time to go home. That sucks. Even if you're not, you know, making it, at least you don't know when you're going to fail. And that's kind of more fun. You don't know when the tunnel's going to just stop and be a dead end. So it's a little bit more fun. There's a little bit more incentive to go for it and keep trying. Like, um, hustling a little bit, working on the street, trying to get people to go to nightclubs and just doing silly stuff just to make a little scratch because it's fun, see if it'll pop, make it roll. But without that, you might not have as much impetus to get up and try something new if you know that you've got the money already, you've taken a loan out. There's less chance that you're going to get motivated to make it happen because you don't have the pressure or the fire under your ass to make it happen. So that's one thing I think is not good about that. The second one is um, you're living a different lifestyle than those who are out there trying to make it happen because you have the money. So you can take the tour or you can do this or you can do that. That's cool, man. That's like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you're there for. But if you're trying to live overseas and be a part of that community or something, people aren't taking vacations every day. They're trying to make their life work. I mean, local people. And
mhm.
so if you think of it like that, like, why should you have all this money to just always be playing? It's kind of not real life. It's just a long vacation, and it's the difference in my head between vacation and travel. Is vacation is something precisely that you pay for now or later, and you don't have to worry about. It's like buy the ticket, take the ride sort of thing. But travel, you're alive in the process. You have to make it work every step of the way. There's nobody there to take you by the hand and tell you get on this bus and go to here and go to there. And those things can be good in packages if you want to go to a specific place, but if that's what the whole trip is about, and I met people who had a whole round the world ticket for a year, and they had it all planned out, the days they were leaving, the days they were going to go to this place, that place, some of the hotels, things they wanted to do. Cool. Make the most of your year, go back, take your, salaried job. If that's your life, that's your life. But that's not what I was about. And there's a big crew that also wasn't about that. So.
Gotcha. Well, how is I'm guessing like after Greece, you went straight to the Czech Republic, right?
And then we went to Czech Republic, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how is kind of like your experience and game plan there?
And
great. First of all, like, why did you decide to go there versus like any other place? Like, was there like a lot more employment there? The job.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was getting near the wire as far as like, well, we're either going to have to turn back right away or make something happen. It looked like Czech was good. We actually had jobs before we even left. We did a phone call. We did a Skype. I think that's when I got Skype.
Okay.
Thanks to Skype. Yeah, right on Skype. And so we got the job with an interview there. I think they were just desperate for teachers. And the wage was, compared to American dollar, it was low, but compared to Czech standard, it was really nice. And so we lived, again, pretty decent local standard. And that was before, I think Czech has since changed their name from the Czech Republic to Czechia and also become much richer. From the girl who is still there that we talk sometimes has told me. So her life has developed well there. And she decided to stay, and then I decided to leave, and that's where we split ways. But that was, and one way to think about this can be your whole life if you decide to leave open-ended. Another reason, like going into a pre-purchased thing is different. It's like you're saying to yourself for sure this is not your new life. So you eliminate that potential future, and that you have a return date, you have a return ticket. You're not really giving yourself the chance to experience a new life. It's like a boat that leaves the harbor but still has the rope attached to it. Well, you might have a long rope if you got a lot of money, but you're not ever going to cross the ocean and see something really new, which is maybe a new life for you.
Well, I guess if you had a lot of money, you can buy a really long rope.
A really long
rope.
Maybe
across the ocean.
Tie the continents together. Yeah. Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. If that's who we're talking to, then I'll start a GoFundMe page and we'll pump it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What did the girlfriend end up doing there that she's been staying there so long for?
She just stuck with what she was doing. We were both English teachers primarily, and she continued to develop private clientele. And
I see.
Still has her practice there as an English teacher. She ended up marrying a military contractor for the U.S. and they have a kid. They're happy. They have a nice place. So that turned into her whole life, and I'm happy for her. And I decided that, I liked my beard more than I liked her, so I just kept traveling on. But that's how it can be too. That open road is there to show you what you want in life, and you have more options, so you can see which ones you take or you gravitate towards.
So how long did you stay in I guess the Czech Republic or Czechia?
So we were there for a year.
Okay.
I like completing contracts. That was something that, even though you and your listeners might get an air that I'm kind of a whatever floaty-doty, I don't break my word, and that served me really well in travel too, because it's kind of a rare thing. That there's a lot of contract jumpers or people who are here one day and then gone the next. Like, always just followed through with what I said, and it served me well because I could keep the reputation of being a reliable employee in a pool full of non-reliable international employees. It's fine. People would still write me recommendation letters years later after I'd said, like, I'm now in Japan. They'd be like, oh, cool, good on you. And they'd write them a rec and it helped me out. So that's always a good thing. Like, even though it's a big world, you're not really leaving your past deeds behind, even if it's in Greece or Czech Republic or whatever. Like, still build yourself as a part of the world community, because then it's going to follow you where you go, Sounds like I'm giving advice, but
no, it's good input. What was like the biggest take between like the population differences of their mindset between like Greece and Czech Republic? Because I know probably at that time both of those countries were struggling financially. Probably
the
quite
Czech Republic was doing pretty good.
They were on the up.
There were banks opening. A lot of my work was at banks, and they were becoming more international, and they were cool. You're from the former Eastern Bloc, and so are the Czechs, and so there's that kind of dark way of thinking of things, kind of cynical, but I think it serves them well. Whereas the Greeks are a little bit more like, happy-go-lucky, a little bit like, well, it'll get done tomorrow. A little bit of that.
Yeah.
Not quite Caribbean happy-go-lucky, but a little bit more like, yeah, whatever. Like it's not that big a deal. And shit never got done. And
Yeah,
houses
it's
were
like
all
we made it this
houses
long
were
in
all half
evolution,
built.
with that kind of mindset. Why not
We're the
continue it,
Greeks.
Yeah.
We've
You
been
want some
around for
grapes?
thousands of years.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like
so totally different type of people.
Americans, don't tell me what to do. You've just been around for like 200 years,
Yeah.
300 years.
Oh, I wasn't
Newbie,
telling them what to do. I was
you
digging it.
noob.
I was digging it. And if I ever found somebody, I'm like, dude, that guy's working hard. They'd be like, yeah, he's from Albania.
Yeah.
Something like that. You start to see these little things. Because from my untrained eye, I can't really tell the difference. But you start to see that that's really an interesting part of travel is we get our mind fixated on the way the world works here in our sphere. Even if that's as wide as the United States, it's still just a real small piece of how the dynamics work socially and, racially, all the stuff that's happening currently in our country. Other countries have their own versions of this, and it's wild to see them. They're like bizarro worlds where you get a feel for these sorts of dynamics in a different way. That was really great to see. And then you can view your own country differently. I think that's kind of a common understanding of why one should travel is that when you come home, it's not the same place, and that's a good thing. Okay, so
So well, first of all, like, did you use a specific website to find employment that someone can use if they're kind of interested in following your path? Or
there's a
how were you able
few.
to kind of search out these jobs?
Yeah, there's a few. So I guess talking primarily to English teachers, which is, as I mentioned, one of the more lucrative ways, or was, this is like more than 10 years ago now, right? Um, to make a living overseas, whether it's just break even living or sometimes making savings. There's Dave's ESL Cafe was big back then. I can't remember the other ones, man, but there's like definitely a handful of them that are out there that you have jobs boards or jobs listings, and it seems like pretty easy. Honestly, you just look it up and send an application. It's like normal job applications, even though they're different countries. If they're going to hire you, then you have the potential to work there, and you can apply for a visa. That's it. It says what your skills are. I met the people who I thought had the best set were ones who were skilled laborers or had an in-demand profession, like an ambulance driver. There were ambulance drivers all over the place, from the U.S., from Canada. They were just living in those countries because they needed ambulance drivers.
That's
Electricians. I
random.
met. Yeah, exactly. There's these random sets of skills, and it's different country to country, but they like need something. Like we need electrical electricians. Come to Chile or come to New Zealand or come to Japan or wherever it is that needs that specific thing, and they're going to help you find that work and visa and everything because they need that for their economy to continue to grow. It's like a bottleneck, bottleneck in a certain profession, and you can't wait the 4 or 5 years to train up, the group of incoming Chileans, let's say, to help the growth continue along. So they put out an open visa. Basically for skilled migrants, and that's cool if you're like a technical person, or if you have something that, if you look at a few of these technical visa lists or in-demand visa lists, you'll start to get an idea of what you see happen again and again. And if you're even relevant to those, you can start to find maybe a niche where a place might open its arms to you, and you'll have a really good lifestyle. So that's one thing. It depends on who you are. But like I said, we didn't really have much. She was a psychology major. I was a philosophy, religious studies major. Nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. They certainly weren't willing to pay for it. So that wasn't the ticket. So English teaching is a foundational potential.
Gotcha. What made you want to kind of leave the Czech Republic and go to another place, like after staying there a year?
A few unplanned trips that just shook me up that I loved. I went to Croatia on like a little vacation from work, and I didn't plan anything. It was great. I just took a week and a half or whatever, like 10 days, and I just said, I'm just going to go and just see how it works. And I met other backpackers, and I was like, wow, opened my eyes. You don't have to really figure these things out. You can just kind of roll with it. And then I got on hook with it. And so I took my leave from my job at the end of the time, and I said, I'm going to go to Egypt. And I took a month in Egypt, and I just wandered around Egypt, and it was like awesome. I just loved it. You feel so free. And every decision is yours to make. Which way are we going today, left or right? It's always your decision. You can go where you want, stay as long as you want. It's so cool, man. So I got on hook, and I was like, I just want to see more of the world like this as best I can. What's different, what's new, and then you get the bug, so they say, and then I wanted to see something new.
So how's your experience in Egypt?
It was wild. It was cool. I had an armed guard that I hired that took me around out in the desert.
That's cool. How much did
It
that
was
cost
cool.
per
Fucking
day?
nothing. It's
Like
crazy.
$10
He had
with
like
the
an
tip
MP5.
included.
You remember
Yeah,
GoldenEye? The MP5s that you could like dual wield? He had one of those.
that's pretty good, man. I would give him like a few extra bucks if he was able to do that. You know,
He was
pretty
cool. He
impressive.
was a cool dude. He was a real quiet dude. I was a little bit like, is this guy gonna take me out into the desert and rob me? But no,
Yeah,
no,
there's a
no. He was.
50% chance that actually might
I had that
happen.
thought, but it was a ridiculous thought because I met him through the police department, which I mean, I don't really know how corrupt the police are in these different countries, but if you can't trust the police, you probably shouldn't even be there. So I went to the police department and got this guy, and he took me out. And because some parts of the desert are pretty wild, there's people who just cross the border all the time, like in Western Egypt. There's no real border. It's in the middle of the Sahara Desert. There's no fence, right? And so yeah, that was a cool adventure. That was one thing I recall, and camping out there with him and all these. I thought they were dogs because of my American mind, and like all these foxes came up on us out of the desert and were like sniffing us out. Like, what are we doing out here, man?
You're
It was
like, you
rad.
die now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
damn.
I had my boy, man. It was cool.
Yeah.
And we went during Ramadan, so there's like most people weren't eating, and that was kind of wild too. So you had to follow it. Didn't have to. There were places that would serve food, but most of the places were closed, and it's kind of cool to follow along with that and see how they go through that, why they do it. So Egypt was cool, beautiful, beautiful country at the time. This is all pre um, Arab Spring, so I don't know what it's like since then.
So did you have like an English tutoring job there, or did you try to find like
No,
another job?
I didn't want to stay in Egypt. I went there
Gotcha.
and I was like, this is cool, but I saw a lot of like rotting flesh and like nasty stuff, and I was like, I'm not gonna stay here. I'm sorry to say, I have the ability to leave, so I will. I'm gonna enjoy myself and then just go. So um, yeah, didn't want to stay in Egypt really. I did meet the Americans. There's an institute in Cairo that has, I guess, some credentials, quite nice credentials. And I met some Americans that were staying in Cairo for Arabic and for Middle Eastern studies and so forth. So it's
And
possible.
how long did you stay there for?
That was a month. That was just a trip.
Oh,
That
okay.
was just
Kind of
something that
short.
got me, like I was saying, that was something that got me on hook for open-ended travel. Just like, just check it out and just wander around and see how the long travel works when you don't have a plan. It's cool.
And I'm guessing you probably took like an airplane there or something, right?
Yeah.
Not like a boat or something like that. Okay.
No,
I
boat.
was just wondering.
Nope, just took an airplane. Air flight in a lot of those regions is pretty cheap. I would look for flights like $200. This is 10 years ago, but I do recall it was always around that. The flights I would take would be like several $100s, and I would get across the world. It was cool. You know, get to
When you
Nepal for like $250. Sure, you spend that at the bar in the weekend if you're so inclined.
when you travel like within the country, do you mainly rely on like trains or do you take like buses?
Depends, man. It depends on
Depends.
the country. If you if you have a country that has a good train system, take the train. But I mean, we're talking about like Germany, Western Europe, Japan. The train is great. In Nepal, there's no trains, so you take a bus or you
Yeah.
take your feet or whatever. It just depends on the place.
I just found like in like for instance the European countries you mentioned, I found like taking a business class bus always personally like a lot more comfortable than taking a
Hmm.
train and like a bit cheaper as well because like you could at least recline the seat where in the train you can't recline the seat. And usually at least with those European trains they have you like freaking facing someone.
You can be,
And then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like just super weird,
Hey,
man. You're just like
oh, that's cool,
facing them
man.
for 2 hours, three
Just start
hours, you know?
start talking to them, unless they're crunchy.
It's
You don't
okay.
want to talk to them.
I'll take the business class bus. Yeah.
Yeah, again,
And
it's a
I
different
found
way.
it just like got you there a little bit faster usually than the train, personally.
Cool. Yeah,
Anyways,
that's a good
that's
tip.
just
I
like
mean,
some random.
and they'll take you to different places that you wouldn't get on the main train line, I'm sure. So that's cool.
Yeah. So what happened after Egypt?
I went to Japan. I
Okay.
went back to the Czech Republic and I started applying for jobs. At that time in the Czech Republic, since I had told my boss, I was like, I'm leaving for a month and basically quitting. I didn't have my job back there, so I knew I was on a short schedule to get moving. And so I went back. I was still working at the bars as like a, what do you call that, pub crawl guy, but whatever. And so I applied for the jobs in Japan and started putting my paperwork together. Got a job in Japan.
With the English tutoring, right?
Yep.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep.
Do you remember
Yep.
what year did you actually get there? Because I remember I ran into you in like 2010, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah. I don't remember. Let me think back. I was there for a span of years. Um, I don't remember, man. Before 2010, that's for sure. I think by the time you had come there, I'd already been there a few years because I felt like I knew which turnstiles we were meeting in Shinjuku. So I kind of felt like I had known the place already for a while.
Gotcha.
Yeah, something like that. I've been there for a while. That's cool. And that was a great opportunity because Japan, being a more developed economy, there was more than just English teaching. So once you get there and you get your feet on the ground and like get your network set up and figure out what you like about it, then there's more opportunities. And I kind of like that in hindsight. It's great to go to countries where it's cheap to live, but it's also not too much to do unless as I mentioned, you have a high demand skill or an English teacher potentially. But in a country that has a full developed economy, it's cool. You can get into a lot of stuff. I mean, I had a great Australian friend who was bending rebar for construction, normal job. And so he lived a life there, and had a normal life. And I ended up doing some similar things, like getting real jobs. Like English teaching is a real job if people take it forward through a career. But a lot of the introductory level classes hinge on the fact that you're not going to be there forever. They kind of don't want you to be there forever. They want fresh people to come through, and they know the deal. They know that a lot of people just want to be there for a year or whatever. Usually a year is the minimum contract, and then you want to float on, and they get it, and you get it, and it's cool. So that's kind of the English teaching vibe. There are opportunities in universities and different schools, but it kind of caps out at a certain level, and so it's cool to experience. And then not mentioning that it's great to experience working with the citizenry in their own particular way. If you work in Japanese construction, you're working with Japanese people, learning about how they do things, how they organize their day, and method of operations. It's different than if you're in a foreigner only environment where most employees are foreigners. You're still just bringing your bubble along with you.
How are the working hours like with these English tutoring jobs? Are they like pretty flexible, or do they have like, is it normal like 40-hour a week, like work week kind of thing?
They're all over the board. You can do evenings, you can do mornings, you can do daytime 9 to 5s, you can do travel teaching, you can do in school teaching, like go to elementary or middle schools or high schools. There's all sorts of different avenues that you can pursue if you like. I worked in the universities in Japan, which was cool. So I would go to campus. I stayed in campus. I had a classroom, and I would just teach classes all day for 8 hours. I taught like 5 classes a day, but I had to be on campus for answering questions and doing sort of paperwork crap. But it was pretty chill job, and had, like I said, it had some stability. In the Czech Republic, I'm running all over the city, which was also fun because I knew the city really well. Going to clients' offices most of the time, like I was saying, I was going to banks and teaching their executives or teaching their middle management, some English technical terms or things like that, whatever, just helping them converse. So there's all sorts of different avenues you can take with it. If that floats your boat, there's more than just what you might think like English teacher from our experiences, American students, like sitting in class, ABC kind of crap. It's different than that.
And you don't actually have to know the local country's language, right, to be an English tutor?
No, you don't have
Or
to.
you do?
You don't have to. There's different opportunities if you do, and I think you'd get more out of it if you knew something. But if that's not what you're interested in, then you don't have to. No.
Gotcha. So what type of kind of living did these English tutoring jobs like provide you? Like, are you basically like paycheck to paycheck in that case, or were you able to have like a little bit to go out, all that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. If you're a reasonable, person and you can do a simple budget, then I made decent money. Oh, I always made decent money when I was overseas, uh, above what I would consider, a living standard that I would have here doing similarly easy work. That's for sure. I think that people in foreign countries realize that you're leaving your home, you're leaving a lot of things. There has to be a little bit more incentive. And maybe not all people, I'm not that well versed, but in my experiences, it seems like they understood you were away from your family and there was a little bit of a incentive there. So the money was not too bad.
Gotcha. And
I always made savings.
And how long did you stay for in Japan?
I was there for a total of 4 years, but it was over the span of like 6 years. So I would leave sometimes for an extended period of time and go do other stuff, try other things out. And then that became my new, remember earlier we talked about, I had a credit card with $2,000 available on it to go to my dad's basement. Well, my new dad's basement became my job in Japan because I had made inroads with it. So I always knew, like, I'll try something new. If it doesn't work out, I'll call my boss up and say, hey, do you need intake for spring? And then they said yes. And so I would go back and do another semester. So that became my new kind of fail safe, which allowed me more freedom. I think it's really helpful to have those ratcheting fail safes where you can feel secure in taking risks, because what are you going to lose? You're just back to where you are, and where you are is not that bad. So cool, take a chance and you get to come back to where you are. That's one way to stay so long. I mean, you asked, the whole idea of this is, how do you stay traveling so long, right? So you build small foundations so that it doesn't all collapse from underneath you. You have friends, and you'll do this naturally if it's the right lifestyle for you. You'll have friends that'll let you crash for a minute until you can figure things out, and you'll let them crash for a minute until they can figure things out if you take a chance or try something new. And oftentimes they'll move along and they'll be in China now, and oh dude, I knew you 3 years ago from Japan or whatever. And so sorry, I just had a call, I just declined. But yeah, so that's one way to think of it, is having like those small foundations that you build along the way to keep you from falling all the way back to the beginning.
Gotcha. And did you? I forgot. You did go somewhere else, like after Japan. Oh, also, like totally like an important subject to cover. Because I remember when I met you, I think the English tutoring company you're working for went out of business, right? Yeah.
I
So can
think
you
that's
talk?
right.
Yeah. Can you talk a little
Well,
bit about some setbacks you're inevitably going to kind of hit when doing these long-term travel? Some of
it
those like
wasn't a setback for
memorable
me.
moments.
I loved it. I was glad they went out of business.
Hey, so, I had a
I
lot
was
of
free.
friends, man. I'm glad they went out of business or they fired me. It was the best decision they could have done because I wasn't going to leave myself, you know?
Yeah, basically. And so it's just an opportunity to be free. If I was married, like some of the guys that worked there had wives and kids, and that's sucks. I mean, that must have been rough for them when they were counting on the income from that to support their growing family. And so sympathy, nothing but sympathy. But I didn't have any of that. Just keep it light, keep it simple. Hey, so what? I'll throw my stuff in a backpack, go where I want to go right now. So that's all it was. As long as you just keep saving little by little. Again, no debt. So a little bit of money. What do you got? Look at what you got. What you can do. Boom. So I hung around for a little bit, and then I just thought about what I wanted to do. Moved on.
And where did
I
you?
I ended up
Yeah.
going back to Japan after that for several more years. So it wasn't the end of it. It was just take a break from it. I was there, I think, another month after the company went under, because I still had the apartment for a while. So I thought I'll live there and enjoy the town. I went to Vietnam and traveled around. Thought I might make a life there. Just move along, check things out.
How come you decided to stay in Japan for so long versus kind of like a few months there, like maybe 8 months here, a year in the
Right.
Czech Republic? Was it
Yeah.
just
Well,
like kind of more just like friendlier or easier just to kind of stay there for long periods of time versus those other countries?
hmm, there's certainly friendlier places. Um, I think it's because I went out knowingly or not looking for something. What was I trying to find? And Japan had a lot to teach me, and it felt like that's what I needed to do. So it didn't feel frivolous anymore. It felt like it's hard to be here, actually, because the discipline's different, their way of relating is different, and I respect it. And so I want to learn about it. And it was deeply intriguing. It was way more than just about being in a job or in a position that, was paying the bills or anything. It wasn't about that. You can make money in a lot of places, who cares? But it was like, how can I become a better person? And these people help me become a better person. I'm romanticizing it a bit, but that's how I thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was more attractive than the necessities of work or food or accommodation. It's like, what are you looking? What's the mission of the reason you're traveling? You don't have to have that before you go, but it may develop if you stay out long enough. You know, what is it that you love? If you get to pick a place and you ask people, if you go anywhere, where would you go? And people say, I want to go everywhere. It's like, okay, that's not even a start, because you can't go everywhere at the same time. Where would you go first is a good question.
You're
And
like
from that,
planet Earth.
yeah, I want to go to
You're like,
planet. I
okay.
want to go to Mars.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's very specific in the grand scheme of the whole universe, you know.
It's
You're
still
like,
pretty
okay.
specific.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to go to Boise, Idaho, or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if you can pick out where you want to go first, all things being equal, then you might start to winnow away, what is it about that place, or what is it that attracts me? And then you just got to go and then continue to think, what is it about this place, if it attracts you, that I love? And then you'll be able to make good decisions about, well, this situation or this place may continue to help me grow in that path. For example, I love natural farming and a more rural lifestyle, me personally. And so that's why I like Japan. They still do small scale farming in a lot of places. There's still a lot of local communities based upon, you know, local farming and crop sharing and all those sorts of things. So I like that. And that's where I wanted to be. And that's what I realized I liked. And then so when I would go to other countries, those are also the situations I would seek out to build sort of a network of common experiences in different countries. Some people might love big cities, so they go to Bangkok, Tokyo, they go to, you know, Singapore or whatever. That's what they want. Is they want the different pulsations from the different big cities. Cool. But it's more than just the place. It's also about you. Like, what are you seeking out? And you might not know, but that might be what the travel's about.
Gotcha. Did you stay for a while in Vietnam, or was it one of those things you just went to kind of check out for
I
like
was
a
there
few
for a
weeks?
while. I extended my visa to stay beyond the tourist visa. I stayed in a monastery there. I was riding my motorcycle. Or I told you earlier, I didn't just ride motorcycles around randomly, but I did, and just rode around for a bit, just feeling free. I met another guy who was a real free spirit, and he kind of opened me up a little bit, even more than I had already felt. Like, let it be, man. You might die tomorrow, kind of stuff. He was a cool dude. Last I heard, he's down in Brazil doing something wild. I don't know. But anyway, so just the opportunities that present themselves when you go, they might keep you, they might tell you to go. You don't know yet. And I might have been there a week and thought, to hell with it. But there was something there that kept me interested.
Gotcha.
You know,
And what was kind of like the cost comparison there? Was it like pretty cheap, or just so
oh
people
yeah,
get a general idea?
real cheap. Vietnam was super cheap back then.
And were you working there as well, or just kind of living off what you made from the job in Japan?
I made a little money in Vietnam, but it wasn't on the books.
I see. Gotcha.
That's always potential. And so, not always potential, but there are some places where that's kind of a potential. It wasn't anything illegal. It was just illegal because I wasn't a visa holder. You know, I wasn't doing drugs or anything crazy like that. No way in hell. Go to jail forever, get your hand cut off or whatever, or killed. You know, the hell with that. But there's little things that pop up here and there. You get a little money.
Gotcha. And were the locals like very welcoming to like foreigners being there or you
Hmm.
being there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vietnamese were great. They were like, "Oh, you're American, great. Like, welcome." That's pretty much it. No bad feelings. It's like, what's there to be, rough about? They won.
Yeah. Gotcha.
They got the country. They got their
Like we all
country.
know what happened. It's okay. There's no
Yeah, yeah.
no reason to
They're-
talk about it anymore.
yeah. Actually, that's a way more complicated issue than I make it sound in that little quip, because there's so much suffering cataloged in the cities, and they have museums about it. But the people found a way to rise above hatred and not hold that. And that was such a bright light in the Vietnamese experience that I had. Is there was no animosity, even though I'm not going to go down the Oliver Stone path, but even though we like burned their children, our country, and so they still were cool. That's a good lesson.
Gotcha.
I
And
don't know
you
what the
mentioned
lesson
it.
is, but there's probably a good lesson.
Yeah, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't answer it either, but got to think about that one.
Mhm.
So how long did you mentioned it a second ago, but how long did you stay there again?
It's it's a little bit longer than half a year.
Gotcha. And you said
Two,
you
I
said
think
you stayed.
two visas with an extension, something like that.
Gotcha. And you said you stayed in this area as well, right?
Hmm.
Did you also stay
Yeah.
in like a monastery in like China or Japan? I forgot. I remember you kind of posting pictures a long
In
time ago, but
in
I don't know where else
Vietnam,
from.
Thailand, China, and Japan.
Gotcha. And what was the general idea of why you wanted to stay in a monastery? And I take it you just
Mm.
live there as well, right? Not like you go there in the morning and then you leave at night and go back to your apartment.
In Thailand, that was the case. In China, that was the case. In Japan, that was the case to the nth degree. In Vietnam, it was illegal to stay there.
I see.
The government didn't let non-registered places have foreigners, and the monastery was one of those places. So I would stay in a nearby apartment, go in the morning, spend the day, and go back to the apartment, which was just a legality. The monks even said, like, dude, we can't, like, sorry, I can't do it, bro. I say, yeah, I get it. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. So
Did they say like bro at the end of the sentence?
I might be misremembering it,
Yeah,
but
that would be super random.
it might
He's
be.
like, sorry, bro, I can't do this.
Sorry, bro, can't do it.
Okay.
I
what
taught
was
you
what
well. I
was
taught you English well. Yeah.
yeah? What was the idea behind kind of staying in these monasteries? What was your motivation behind it?
Get enlightened, bro. I don't know.
Well, I never stayed. I never stayed in a monastery. Do you guys like what's the general theme of like what happens there on a daily basis?
Austerity is a theme of all the monasteries I stayed in, where you just kind of live a life that'll toughen you up a little bit, and more rigorous scheduling, where you're waking up early and eating less. Those are themes of monasteries. Um,
So
without
no
getting into
bodybuilding diets.
in China, those dudes were strong. They
Yeah.
weren't big, but they were strong as hell. They were so strong because they were. It was a. I'm I'm not into like martial arts that much, but it was a kung fu monastery. So it was a Buddhist monastery, but they practiced kung fu, uh, gong fu as like a physical, keep your body healthy sort of thing. But they were doing like flying kicks and all this crazy stuff and handstands and like jumping off walls. They were doing that stuff all the time, like every day training. That was their thing for a couple hours a day. And then they would do the other monastery stuff. I'm like, wow, that's wild. And they would have us do some of it, but you couldn't. I was like tearing my hamstrings. Like, I can't do this shit. Like 1,000 high kicks. Like, what? I'm just a, I'm
And
just a
that's just the
dude.
morning warm up routine.
Yeah, I'm just a white dude. I'm not Jackie Chan here.
Yeah.
But those
You're
guys were
like with
cool,
that kind of
man.
mindset, you never will be.
Those guys were real cool. They were probably the coolest set because they had so much dignity because they knew how strong they were. They weren't petty. They were real cool.
Gotcha.
They,
So after Vietnam, did you go back to Japan?
not right away. I think I was out for like a year and a half the first time I left, and I wandered around for a bit. I
Oh,
got
so
a job in
you went
Australia
back to the
eventually.
States or Australia, right? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Back um, to an English-speaking country, and it was so easy all of a sudden. I was like, wow, I can understand. I can talk to people. I can express my personality in a different way. So it was easier, and got a job, and I was there for a year
And I
on a
remember kind
work
of
visa.
rewinding way back. I remember you went to Ireland for a while as well, right?
I never went to
Oh,
Ireland. It
oh
might be
okay,
somebody else.
okay, okay. Cool. So
Yep.
and you said you're in Australia for like a year,
Yeah,
and
and
and I take it
worked
there it's
there.
probably like pretty expensive compared to
Yeah, it was
like
expensive.
Vietnam or. Gotcha.
It was expensive. It was like living in LA or something like that, expensive. But I didn't spend a lot of money. I just was working to save money and just, hey, have a beer every once in a while with the boys. Just normal lifestyle.
What did you do for work in that area?
I
I
worked in
take
a
it they
grocery
probably
store.
don't need English tutors there,
Nah,
right?
I just a migrant worker, man. I worked in a grocery store.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it
Cool.
was not glamorous, but for me it was fun because it was different, just a little different. It was fun, and it was cool.
I noticed like random grocery store um, story was like last time I was in Czech Republic. You know how like in America they always just weigh the groceries, like weigh the fruits and vegetables for you at the cashier register. But in Czech Republic, you're supposed to weigh it yourself and put a stamp on it, like
Yeah,
that sticker. And I didn't know
yeah.
that, man. So I just like brought it to the front and just like put it
They're like,
there, and then the woman was like so pissed off, you know. I was like, dude, how am I supposed to? I clearly look lost, you know, and you know I'm lost. How am I supposed to know? Like, I'm supposed to weigh it myself and put a damn sticker on it telling you how much it weighs, you know.
Yep, that's
Anyway,
right.
I was like some random grocery store.
Yeah, we're spoiled here. Want them to
Yeah,
weigh our food for us, bag it for us. Like,
yeah,
come on now, you can
yeah.
do
So
that.
yeah, yeah. So what happened? What happened after after Australia?
What did happen? I went back to Japan. Yeah,
And was that around the time like I ran into you? Probably around 2010.
that sounds about right. I think that's about right. Yeah, yeah. So that was cool. Some jobs, and it'll vary on the connection you have to the industry, but some jobs will fly you to the place. So that's why I went back to Japan, because I was like, I'm all the way down in Australia, and it's expensive to get anywhere from here. So I'm either stuck here or I have to get out somehow.
Like might have
So
to bag groceries for a while to get a plane ticket out of here, you
I
know.
wasn't bagging. I was
Or
just
I mean,
stocking.
whatever, like working at the
Yeah,
grocery store, just in general.
yeah. That was kind of cool because it was a night shift job. That was a new experience. So I would work at 9 at night to 5 in the morning. And so I would come out at 5 in the morning, and it was sunrise, and there's all these different birds singing, and it's like, wow, it's a simple life, but there's so much beauty in it. And I found that a lot being on the road. It's just nothing is boring. Whereas that in the U.S., that would suck. If I was here working 9 to 5, 9 at night to 5 in the morning at a grocery store, I would be depressed as hell. No offense to anybody who is, but if you can get yourself out, if you want to get yourself out, I hope that you can. But doing it there is like, it's an experience, it's an adventure. It's like something cool, something new. Nothing lasts forever. Just let it roll, and then at the end, you can do what you want to do. And so I like that about it too. I never felt down about myself. I always felt like it was something worthwhile because it was an adventure, it was travel, it was a new experience. So right, and then back to Japan because they flew me back there. So cool.
Yeah. Also, like it's kind of a little off topic, but regarding kind of working a full-time job, I think like working like 40, 50 hours a week doing the same exact thing is just gonna like wear anyone down, in my opinion, you know? So like I
Probably.
adopted like the 20-hour a week work schedule where the time in between I just use on, you know, like studying, reading books, stuff that is going to kind of keep you learning new stuff. And that kind of helps me keep a lot of interest in the job, where I feel like if you worked 40 or 50-hour weeks, especially if you get like a little older, you kind of run out of energy and you don't have time to do that continued, or the energy to do that continued education. And you end
Mm-hmm.
up doing the same thing like over and over because you only have like a limited toolbox, you know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
kind of like, even if you were passionate, even if you had a passion for the field, it kind of will wear down, you know, 10 years, 15 years down the line. At least that's what I experienced with like myself and a lot of like clients I've trained over the years. Anyways, just a little.
I think that's wisdom. If you get too invested in one particular track and then that track falls out from underneath you, or you get tired of it, more likely, like as you put it, then you don't really have any fallbacks or secondary options. Secondary options are great. That's the way evolution works, is you have so many options and then most of them die and one of them lives on. And you can do that with your life too. If you have a lot of different options, then some of them might fall through and some of them might work out. But if you only got one, so
Gotcha. So
I'm
after
trying
you
to echo
already,
what you said. I thought it was
yeah.
pretty smart.
So after you already took off from Australia and went back to Japan, what year is this already? Like how many years have you been traveling consistently? Kind of already lost track with all the timelines you've mentioned.
I don't know either, man. There was a time when I used to know, but I did come back. Let's see. So I was in Japan when I was 30, but I had been back in the US just prior to that. And so at this time that we're talking now, I mean, I'm already in this for 5, 6 years, something like that. And so, I spent my next 10 year in Japan, and then made a long route home, meandering route home. Took me a year or two, something like a year and a half, and then went back to the U.S. Said, "No, I ain't for me." I was there for a year. Went back to Japan for
What was
another
the
year.
story with that? Like how
So
come you went back to try it out and then you're like, ah, fuck this. I did the right thing to begin with by leaving, you know?
yeah, kind of. I mean, kind of. It's like, dude, there was a reason I left. I guess I had just forgotten. It was like, why did you leave? It's like, because it wasn't doing it for me. I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel like I had a purpose. There was plenty of clones just like me. I wasn't important. I wasn't interested. I didn't want to play the game, as I'm sure a lot of people our generation are in that mindset now. It's like, I don't want to be a cog in this machine it sucks. I see the generation ahead of us working themselves to the bone for what? For a suit and a tie that ties up to their neck and chokes them to death? Who wants that?
Yeah.
Maybe some people do. Some people do want that. Good. But there's a growing number of people that don't want that. And that's what I also didn't want. But I didn't have the creative mind to find a way out of it. And so rather than going through it, and I view it as sort of like a Lion King story, to bring that story to mind. He leaves for a long time, but it's great that he's there. If you guys remember the story, like the Hakuna Matata time, it's great. What's wrong with it? Nothing. He's a big lion. There's nobody to trouble him. Everything's going good. But it's not where he's from. It's not where the real work needs to be done. And that's the sort of return of the archetypal, voyager. Is the return home. Is you return home with what you've gathered. If you go back to try to make it through whatever it seemed like you couldn't make it through before, and face the darkness that might have been what drove you away in the first place, to get heavy. But that's how it felt. Like it was a big mythological voyage of my own character that I wanted to create and be. So you go out, you come back, you face it rather than run away, or run away, which is what I did again. And then just as I had left the second time, thought, man, am I going to just run away for the rest of my life? And it really started to sink in, like what it means to be an adult. And hitting 30 at the same time was like, there's a very real phase distinction that felt to me was palatable with the changing of the seasons of your life, and had to discover a different sort of responsibility rather than just enjoying and being free is great, but there's more I can do. So that was a hard decision. And then I did come back again after that year. I said, okay, well then that's it. I'm setting this year aside. I'm already here. I've already gotten over here. I was in a monastery again, trying to figure
And this is
out
in
what I want
Japan,
to do.
right?
This is in
This is
Japan.
back
Yeah.
in Japan. Okay.
At this time, this is where I feel like is my home, as I kind of mentioned. That was like the foundation for where I wanted to be. I just thought, I don't think we're helping any of your listeners find out how to travel cheap and just tell them my life story.
No,
But
that's good info. I mean, it tells them like basically how you got from A to B on all your destinations, and
it will find its own winding path is, I guess, the overarching theme. And so I end up there trying to figure out life, and maybe that's what travel's about. If you ask, like, what is the reason I want to go, then that's the start to getting an answer. And I guess that's what I was doing when I was there, is asking, why did I leave? What is going on? What do I want to be? What am I afraid of? What is reality to me? What do I want it to be? And all those things I had to choose finally. Time was up, bro. Like, you're 30 now. Are you going to make a choice, or are you just going to continue to let things happen to you? And it wasn't bad to let things happen to you when you don't have preferences. But once you develop your set of character traits and preferences, I think it's time to start working for those, and saving what you feel is valuable and rejecting what you feel is invaluable to you.
yeah.
And once you have those preferences, you're kind of bound to them. You can't continue to let them be malleable with good conscience. So.
Yeah, and to kind of add to what you said, if a person does have like a hard time understanding the importance of like core values and how
Mhm.
those core values kind of form the blueprint to who you are as a person, they could check out this one cool, like pretty extensive DVD series. I think it's like a 16-hour DVD series called like Finding Your Legacy. It's like PPS1 by Paul Chek. And it's like really cool. And it doesn't, honestly, it just basically tells people to go about and start making mistakes really quick in life. And by making mistakes, you learn like what you don't want in your life,
Mhm.
so that you can be more clear about what you do want in your life. But it gives you like a pretty cool, like general blueprint of how to go about doing that in like a safe manner. You know what I mean? So you also don't lose everything in the process. And so if a person is confused about that process and they want like an outside perspective, that DVD series is pretty cool. Anyways, not to be
Sounds
too
right
off
on.
topic, but to kind of
I think it's on topic.
basically you went through the steps of what's covered in that DVD, finding it out yourself. But if a person is more of
Right.
like, I want more of a textbook approach, you know what I mean, to it, that's a pretty cool program that outlines the importance of obviously finding your core values. Then once you find your core values, then you'll be able to land the jobs you want more often, you know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, is this job aligned with like what I want in life? You know what I mean? Instead of like just randomly just looking at the paycheck, for instance, or stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I
So
do know what you mean. I think that's a really good way to think about it. If you're disciplined enough to follow through. That sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. So what was so how long did you end up staying in Japan for, or before I take it you went to Thailand, you also mentioned, and also to China as well?
Yeah, it's all a blur, but yeah, throughout that region of the world,
Gotcha.
Thailand, China. I like China. It's fascinating. Ancient culture, so big, so rapid. Yeah, I was just back there in March, so this recent spring, and wow, it's changed even since I was there, 5 years ago or whatever, 7 years ago. It's amazing. It's an amazing country, and that if we see enemies in the media, to put it like that, I say enemies with a tongue in cheek, but you see that sort of cast. Those are the most important places to visit because then you can see through that and see what's reality. Like, have you been to Russia, Eugene?
No, just kind of like
Okay.
Ukraine, Moldova area.
Yeah, I'd be
But people
curious
are
what
people,
what
man.
you'd
From
think.
traveling, I just
Right.
people over there, people over here. It's all the
People
same
are
values. Everyone just wants to be like safe and happy with their family or whatever for the most part. And that's about it, man. There's really no difference between over there, over here. It's all the same
yeah,
nonsense. So
it's a solid core, I would say.
yeah. So what made you actually want to? Because right now you're living back in the States. What made
Hmm.
you actually want to, say like, okay, it's been enough. It's been like 10 plus years. I'm ready to kind of move back.
Mm. It was joining that Zen monastery because there was I had always wanted to do that. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I always wanted to do that since I was a college student, and it always just seemed kind of like a fantasy or something. I guess I was just taking all that time to build up the courage to try something like that, and um, doing that and thinking, okay, is this my life? Is this what I want? Is this what I want my life to be? And I have to come to terms. What do I want my life to be? Or do I have the opportunity to make the life that I want? That led me back home. Simple as that. I came home to create the life that I want, that I discovered that I wanted via experience and thought and reading and travel and so forth. It's like, this is the life I want. Where's the fertile ground for making that life? And it was here. So,
Was it? Can you talk a little bit about kind of the hardships? Because I know, like, I haven't traveled as much as you, but like for the longest period I've traveled for was like a little under 4 months, and then
mhm.
even coming back to the States was like tough even during that short period of
Yeah,
time. So I can
yeah,
imagine like after 10 plus years, it's like you're almost coming back to like, and the U.S. is kind of
it's
such a
crazy.
fast-paced country as well. You get kind of like left behind like so fast. Like people are so busy with their works, they kind of forget about you really quick. Which I don't blame them. I mean, they have their own problems to deal with, and the world's moving
Right.
fast. So, but what's like? How's your experience like with that?
Yeah, well, let's say before the permanent move home, the prior move, which is just before this experience in the temple, in the Zen temple, that's exactly what hit me as I came home, and it felt like wham, like everything's. I didn't have a smartphone, by the way, this entire time. This entire time, no smartphones, no computer, nothing, which is a different aspect of traveling or being. I mean, you think about travel as a physical thing, but it's also an experience of a different lifestyle, as I've alluded to. And so I'm coming back into all of it at once. My dad got me an iPhone 5 because he's like, you got to have this or you're not going to get a job. I'm like, what the hell? I hated it, man. I felt like it was the Palantir from the Lord of the Rings, the two-way mirror. You look in, it looks back at you. And I just felt cursed by the modern world and I hated it. I just didn't see the point, the stress that it adds onto your life and doesn't add any value. The value is lost, actually, and you gain stress. So what? It's a very simple equation to me that if you're getting stress and you're trading satisfaction, that's not a good trade. And that's exactly what I felt like I was doing. Like my life was becoming less healthy, more stressful. Um, I had less integrity as a person. I didn't have the right or the ability to choose my own schedule because I was at the demands of, like you mentioned, these insane work weeks to try to make your life, up and up. I hated it, man. I just hated it. And that was like starting a long climb up. I said, to hell with this. Why even waste any time doing this? I put my time in and went back to Japan. But then it's sort of like, well, if you don't do it, when are you going to do it, or what are you going to do? So you eventually have to come back and push through it. And it was way easier the second time when I didn't leave myself an option. Like, I'm not going to run away this time. Let's just come back and just do it. I came into it with a little bit of a fortitude, knowing that the enemy was as strong as I had just felt prior, a year, 2 years prior, but knowing I had to face it anyway. It was a better defense against return than simply coming in blindsided, because I felt totally blindsided coming in and being wham, slapped in the head. The world had sped up so much. People's minds were so different, divided. Um, I don't know if it was just memory or what, but I felt like the country got angry and petty, and it was everybody, the whole mentality felt different to me. And like I say, I don't know if it's just my mind, my bias. I'm hanging out with people who are living in the countryside growing watermelons, man. Maybe that's as simple as that. And then I come back here and, you know, I said, I'm just going to get through it and get through this stuff and then get to the place I want to be and build my own life, because it has to be there. It has to be there, or I'll die looking for it, I suppose. And so it came back and it didn't take as long as I thought. It was about 2 years, and I felt like I was in the place I wanted to be.
Gotcha. I guess to
Yeah.
relate to your story, I felt like a kind of very similar feeling like after I graduated from college, because I was already kind of I was a self-employed trainer already through college.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the option of, after college, getting that office job, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like the general goal of being at the end of college. I'll kind of stop training and get the office job. But then luckily, like training people over the years of being in college, I kind of learned what that kind of lifestyle can do to your mental and physical health, like 30 or 40 years down the line. Because I saw like the byproduct of that, of who came in to kind of improve their health, and
Yeah.
that kind of really scared
Right.
me. And the fact that all my friends were doing it when they got out of college kind of put that peer pressure on it, at least like how I perceived it. You know what I mean? I'm like, am I doing something wrong? I mean, everyone's going this route, although like at the bottom of my heart, I felt it's like so constricting, you know what I mean? So like restricting kind of like of a lifestyle. And I mean, luckily I didn't do it. And I'm very thankful that I didn't go that route, but I
I'm
kind of
thankful
like,
you didn't either.
yeah, I kind of sensed the pressure like you felt, because at the end of the day, you need work and you need security. But then the type of work and security like your typical corporate job offers is kind of like miserable beyond belief, in my opinion, like very restricting to your creativity. I mean, everyone's so unique, and the fact that no job is going to kind of facilitate your core values at the end of the day, the myriad of your unique core values that specifically apply to you. So something's always got to give. And because of that, I feel there's always going to be some kind of resentment for the job, especially the amount of hours you're
Mm-hmm.
forced to spend there. And that's going to really wear down on you, like mentally and physically over the years. And some people are like, oh, he's exaggerating. But I'm like, dude, go into any office and like 9 out of 10 people you see are like obese, full of like mental and physical pain. Like last survey I did was on software engineers, where we took like a sample of 52 and we had them fill out like a health questionnaire. And it's like the average between the two 52 samples rated like really high in like GI inflammation, constipation, very high in like depression, anxiety, very high in anger. That's kind of scary to work with people that are rated like so high in anger. I'm like, damn, better be careful, especially nowadays, with all these mass shootings going on everywhere. And then 27% of subjects reported being on some kind of psychiatric medication. I'm like, dude, there's something wrong with that environment if it's producing like this much illness. You know what I mean? Anyways, that's kind of like objectively speaking about the issue. I felt so. And it sounds like you
It's a
felt as
bold
well.
choice. It's a bold choice to compliment you and myself, I suppose, is to not take that road that is laid out for us. Why did they lay it out for us? It's not for our benefit. It's for their benefit. That's the reality, I think. So doing your own thing, finding your own. If you have a desire to do a career that requires support, I mean, you have to join a company if you want to build robots. Good luck starting on your own. Suppose you could, but you're probably better served if you have a corporation to get you going. But if you're not in that mindset, if you can do your own thing, like you're doing your own thing, I'm doing my own thing. It feels so much better, man. So
Yeah.
bless you.
Well, I guess last question. You know, space exploration is becoming a lot more popular in the last like 5 years with all these private companies. So if you had a chance, like, bam, you're going to go to Mars one-way mission, you're going to do it or not?
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
No
it's a little
way.
too cold for me there.
No way in hell,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
If Elon goes, good for him.
Yeah.
But, no thanks, man. He's a cool guy. I love that guy. He's got the idea of needing to have a future worth living for. I think it resonates with me. I like that he has that mentality. Like, that's why we're doing it, because we need something to look forward to. I guess that's how I feel about travel. If you feel bummed about your life, like, make it something that you're excited about. You know, what could be more valuable than that? Who cares about money? If you're not interested in living your life, make it exciting. Make it something you want to do. It's like, well, the hell with it. I'm going to Spain then. Do it. That's what I say to people if they ever ask me in my personal life about travel. I say, dude, are you unhappy? It's like, yeah. It's like, what could be worse?
Yeah.
So.
I guess, yeah. I guess sometimes maybe a good argument would be like, oh, well, it could get worse. You know what I mean? If I make another,
Yeah, I suppose so.
not necessarily get better, but it could actually get worse. And I don't know. Like, I personally don't know. I don't know any of my friends that took the leap and it actually has gotten worse for them. You know what I mean? I personally don't know. Anyways, yeah.
Nor I. I did not meet anyone that regretted the decision. They might regret it when they get home, but you know, who knows? Who knows what the right thing to do is? Nobody but you ultimately. So I think that's a good way to explore it if you want to take a chance. It's a young man's game, though, and no, I'm not going to Mars.
Go, me either, man. I'm just gonna buy some postcards, and that's okay, and watch the DVD video on it, and that's okay with me.
I salute them. I salute
Yeah.
the guys and girls that they're gonna go fly out there and start a new life, and I'm happy for them. And it'll be a grand adventure, just like it was for people who came to all sorts of places on the planet. It'll be more akin to the cavemen coming across the Bering Strait than it would be to any of the other advanced civilizations recolonizing, because there's not going to be anything there. They're going to just be out there on their own, man. That's going to be.
Who knows, man? Maybe there's already like a McDonald's over there, dude.
Yeah, the one thing we have in common.
Yeah.
Everybody loves fats and
like,
salts.
Man, and one of those like injury lawyers. They always have those, you know, advertised everywhere, as random as it is. That's like the staple of humanity, like a McDonald's and then an injury lawyer. You know,
call the hammer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, all right, Thomas. Well,
wish you the best, man.
It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks again. Thanks again, man. Have a good